while walking here in the streets in Pridnestrovia, the more I spend time here, the more I kind of get used to the fact that the history and present time is so closely intertwined, and now it doesn't feel to me that shocking to see this guy standing in every center of the town, but it is still strange. And while I was thinking about it, and by the way, when I was talking with locals, whenever I ask, I'll try to hide my microphone from the wind. Whenever I ask about what's their attitude that Lenin is still standing and they still have the streets of communism and Marx and so on, and they say basically, usually, the ones which I have heard, they say, hey, just history. Quite neutral attitude. They don't see it as something good and that they are for it. But they're not scared of it either. It's just a piece of history. That's why the monuments are there. It's history. And in a way, I think, maybe that's even healthier attitude than I have. I have never thought about it before. Because growing up in Latvia, we had very clear attitude about everything related to communism, Lenin and USSR. It was never anything positive because we Latvians, we had our independent country before communists came. Between the world wars, we were lucky to get independent and to be independent and to have democracy and quite high level of freedom. At the end, during time of Ulmanis, freedom wasn't that high anymore, like it was in many countries during those times, authoritarian times. But the economy was very good and people were remembering those times as something very good. And then the Second World War started. Germans came in, then Russians came in, they changed hands, well, Latvia changed hands a few times, and at the end, Soviet Union established in Latvia to stay, for Latvia to become part of Soviet Union. And while Soviet Union people, leaders, would call it liberation, that they liberated Latvia from fascistic Germany evil, Latvians never saw it that way. We always saw it that one superpower came, drove out the other superpower and took us with them. We wanted to live our lives in our own house as the owners of the house, instead of being tenants to somebody else bigger who owns the house. And because of that, we never saw it as liberation when Soviet army came in. We were even joking that yes, the liberators came in and liberated us. And from what did they liberate us? Yes, also from Hitler, which is nice, thank you, of course. But also, they liberated us from right to private property. They liberated us from money. They owning too much money, so to say. Owning anything too much. If you owned anything too much, you were sent to gulags, because you wouldn't be a supporter for proletariat rule. They liberated us from any kind of freedom. They liberated us from many things. Yes, they are liberators. Now, so with that kind of attitudes, we Latvians saw mostly, pretty much everybody as far as I know, we saw the communist rule. And that's why whenever we saw Lenin and Communist Party and everything, all the things related to communist rule, we always saw them as enemies, as intruders, oppressors, unjust, evil power, which hopefully someday we somehow will get rid of. And I remember I thought I might share it with you. I hope it's not something too crazy to share. I remember in the end of 80s, beginning of 90s, when the glasnost and perestroika times came under Gorbachev and more freedom came, as soon as Gorbachev gave a little tiny bit of freedom to people, people immediately started to, how do you call it? Politely saying, asking more for more freedom. and it was a huge emotional times in many countries, especially Baltic countries, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. And I remember I was standing in that live chain through the 3 countries, from Tallinn to Vilnius through Riga, and it felt like all the citizens of those countries came to that Via Baltica road, and we were standing, joining hands in a live human chain from Tallinn through Riga to Vilnius, as a sign of unity and unviolent, what was the term in English, the thing which Mahatma Gandhi was doing, non-violent, forgot the term, but you know probably what I mean, resistance kind of thing, but there was some other term, I think. And during those times I remember we were all longing to see Latvia free again, and when it happened, people were greeting each other in the morning saying, "Good morning in the free Latvia." And it was quite emotional times. And as about Lenin, I remember thinking and longing for the times when one day no town would see any Lenin in the center anymore. And I remember there was a small town, and we were as tourists there, we were just traveling, and there was something crazy happening that morning. Whole town was shocked, because what happened was that during night, nobody knows who did it, there was a Lenin's bust, like a bronze one, not like this from stone, heavy one, but the bronze one, which is lighter. And somebody had overturned that bust, and it had fallen down from that, what do you call that, podium, how do you call it, and it had fell down, face down in the mud. And I remember seeing that with other people. And during that time still KGB was there, and the Red Army was in Latvia still, and it was still like there was levels of freedom were up because of that. It could happen. Without that, nobody would dare to touch it, only to bow down and put flowers at his feet. But it was still frightening, and everybody was still frightened and walking around, and nobody dared to come close to that place. We were all walking around like here it would be walking like there and there and there, where you can see what happens, but you wouldn't be too close and you wouldn't be caught for enjoying that view. And everybody was pretending not to notice it, but everybody was looking. Lenin is kissing the ground, face in the mud. It was such a satisfying view for everybody, and people were afraid because nobody knew who is the reporter to KGB, and if you get reported for such a thing, well, it's not a joke. Even in those times when freedom were starting to come in, people were still afraid. And I remember we were walking on the places like those, hiding behind corners and looking, and other people was there as well, and people were looking, and they were noticing that we are looking as well on the Lenin face in the mud, and they were looking, and they saw that we are kind of happy about that as well, like they are, and they were smiling, but quickly going away again, because you shouldn't be too excited, because you don't know who is watching. The big brother is watching you. and that was some huge feeling to see Lenin overturned on the face in the mud. And everybody was so satisfied, because normally we never got to see such things. Normally the best which we got to enjoy was seeing pigeons. I'll come closer. Seeing pigeons land on the Lenin's head. Let's say in Riga it was very typically often happening. Pigeons were landing on Lenin's head and taking a poop there. and then I remember I was watching it, and it was so satisfying to see, because it was such an evil. Like, I don't speak about the person. Person is person. It's a separate story. But I speak about this whole monster of Lenin, which was built in the Soviet Union by the party. And it was so satisfying to see how a pigeon lands on the head of Lenin. And then we were watching to see if he will take a poop. And then suddenly a pigeon turns his backside towards Lenin's face, and the white thing goes down his nose. It was so satisfying for us. And I remember with my brother, we were in Riga, and we were looking, and maybe we were just seeing it, I don't know, or was it really true? But we were looking that there was Lenin's statue, and there was statue of Rainis quite near. Rainis was Latvian poet, and because his poetry was also, how do you say it? The red guys, the communist guys, also liked his poetry, and because of that he wasn't forbidden, so his statue was also there. And maybe we were just seeing with my brother, but I remember we were talking, look at Rainis' head, it's clean, and look at Lenin's head, it's all white and pigeon poop. And it was so satisfying, because it felt like in this completely unfree, oppressed environment, unjust, unrighteous environment, there is at least some fresh air of some righteousness being done by these birds pooping on Lenin's head. And I remember that we were looking and thinking about these things, and I don't know, was it really true that it was a difference between Rainis and Lenin? At least we were seeing it. And from all that, standing here now and seeing those people around here having a complete neutral attitude to this guy and to this, oh, I almost fell into a big yeah, I shouldn't walk backwards that easily. I have lived in Western Europe for too long. I forgot. Sorry. So seeing people having so extremely neutral attitude, yeah, that's part of history. That's what it was, and that's why the monuments are for. That's history. Having seeing this kind of attitude, I'm thinking, maybe my attitude is not that neutral actually, because I still remember enjoying seeing birds having a poop on this man's head. Should I? Should I enjoy it? Of course, that was a huge evil, and everybody around us, including my family, had suffered greatly under those times. And both my my granddads were sent out to gulags, and all of these things happened, of course. That's not a small thing, but at the same time, this man who is standing here, he's a human being. Well, this monument is not. That's part of the big monstrous machine of Soviet. But I was just catching myself at the idea that I'm hating these men as well. Should I? They are made from the same stuff as me. That's something new for me to think about it, because I have never thought about it. I was just happy to see it away and got rid of it and be free without these guys. I'm still happy not to have Lenin's statue wherever I live. But at the same time, I shouldn't be hating those people, no matter how much evil happens through them. So let's release this hatred and let's be free. Let's be even freer. So that were my funny memories about the history of Lenin in Latvia and in my life in general. If you found it useful, good. If not, don't watch these videos and don't subscribe to my channel. Don't dare to do it. All the best. Have a good day.